Speculation money in the sports card hobby is at all-time highs, even more so than 2020, 2021. But there's something that just happened recently that I think really kind of changes the game here as it came to fruition. Stay tuned to the end. Walking into the east entrance. Parking is no joke out here, man. And I almost fell. What's going on, sports card hobby family? It's another day, it's another sports card video. We are back again. Before I dive into all the speculation money, a little bit more of a financial talk today. This is going to be an interesting one, and we're going to look at it from a few different sides. Huge thanks to today's video sponsor, COMC.com. 35 plus million cards on the database: baseball, football, basketball, hockey, non-sports, Marvel cards at all different price points, and a lot of hidden gems on COMC. There's cards that I just don't see on eBay. I don't see them on auction sites. And then, oh my goodness, just pop up there on COMC. So make sure to pay attention there onto COMC. You can also grade cards through PSA on COMC as well as CGC. Speaking of PSA, if you've never graded with PSA, first-time submitter, we'll take $25 off your first submission. I've got a code down below, SCD25 with a link, SCD25 at the shipping and billing page, and you take $25 off your first order with PSA, one card minimum. Try them out. All right, something is shifting. I've been talking about this over the last couple of weeks, and I think that there's some really big picture things that are happening. And I'm trying to put all this stuff together, trying to formulate for my own collecting / speculating / investing in quotation marks, trying to figure out how I am going to approach my buys and my sells and that sort of thing. And I think that's what makes the hobby go around. That's what makes it so fun, the buy, sell, trade element of it. But a lot of big picture things have an effect on the market. If we go back 4 years ago, what was the big picture thing that really was huge for sports cards? $4 trillion of stimulus coming into the market in combination with everyone being home, in combination with people like me that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe even getting back in, that are having their midlife crisis.
You take the card and put it in the sleeve.
All of that has taken place here over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And I've had recent comments too from collectors just getting back in again. So there's people that are just now my age that are like, you know what? I'm getting into cards in some capacity. And then, of course, yesterday's video was just more all about how are you getting in and that sort of thing, and how are you spending and how are you doing that sort of stuff. Something you don't see every day. 86-87 Flair complete set for the Jordan 8, 7, 8, 6. Okay, so speculation money, even though prices kind of went like this and then came back down and corrected pretty harshly going back a few years, there has been a very steady kind of increase, especially in certain pockets. You know, a lot of people talk in my comment section. There's other channels that are dedicated to 90s inserts, parallels, even base cards that are just more rare or high grade base cards or whatever, but the 90s. The 90s is a big focus area for collectors / speculators. And you hear the term speculative bubble get thrown around all the time. And I think that it's so interesting. I'll use the Jordan market as an example when it comes to 90s inserts. I don't have any of the Jordan 90s inserts. I focus more on the 80s Jordan cards that I want to pick up. But in the 90s, if you look online, there's a lot of collectors, whether it be IG or whether it be on the YouTube machine, that are all big talking about, you know, the 90s insert cards. And they have been, you know, there's a lot of those cards that are still setting all-time highs. I've had a couple of Jordan collectors that have reached out to me over the last 12 months, different ones that have said, I have 7 figures of Jordan cards, 7 figures, and I am looking to stockpile. You know, if there's a rare insert that comes out, rare parallel, rare Jordan card, 90s specifically, I'm all over that. I want to corner the market, but I just want to have those. I look at those as store of value. You know, if you've got 7 figures of Jordan cards, you've probably got 7 figures of stocks and real estate, housing, etc. You're probably doing pretty well for yourself. But my point here is that there are people that have made a decision. They've made a decision to say, you know what? My focus, my lane is going to be Mickey Mantle cards. And I'm talking about high net worth whales. Yes, of course, there's average Joes like myself that are buying Jordan cards or Mantle cards or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about whales that are getting in on certain areas, but they're just sticking to that area. It might be 1950s Mickey Mantle cards. It might be 1990s MJ cards, but this is a big reason why you're seeing all of these kind of all-time sales. And how are these Jordan inserts? How do they continue to go up in price? Because there are high net worth whales. I know a handful of them, but there's more that I don't know that are out there that are buying these as they come up. It's not necessarily that they just want to own one copy because they think the card is cool. They look at these as strong speculative assets. And you've seen a move to that. We've seen that. My buddy DPZ, he's a big Griffey guy, Ken Griffey Jr. And you've seen movement with Ken Griffey Jr. cards as well. Go back 5-7 years for a lot of these cards, and they're a fraction, just like a lot of cards though. That's not just Griffey cards. I mean, if you look at, I've got a few charts that I pulled up here. There's a lot of cards that, you know, they were kind of steady for a long time. They shot way up, or they kind of steadily moved up and then shot way up, came back down, and then they've plateaued at a new floor in quotation marks. You have a card like the 1993 SP Jeter rookie card, foil, in a PSA 9. I ran that chart. Now, that's one that's kind of interesting because if you go back to, I think I ran it I ran the full data, but 2019, essentially the price now is about $4,000. And if you go back to 2019, there was $5,000 sales for that card. So that's actually a card that over the last 5 years, yes, it went up and yes, it corrected, and it's actually less expensive than it was pre-pandemic. I happen to think a lot of the reason for that, and I don't have this data in front of me, but the population on the card, I have to assume that the population over the last 5 years, look at how many cards, like we all know this, they're grading 1 million plus cards a month. My assumption here over the last 5 years is that the pop count on that particular PSA 9 Jeter has gone up pretty dramatically, especially considering too that, you know, there's a lot of people that are trying to crack out the 9 to get it into a 10. They're going to send it PSA 5 times because the 10, there's only like 25 or 30 or 40 10s or something, and the 10 is worth like $1 zillion. So that's kind of an interesting case study in itself. But there are cards that have kind of corrected back down to pre-pandemic prices. Now, some in my comments section will say, you know what? I don't know if it's such a great time to buy cards. You know, when you look at guys like, you know, Warren Buffett that are sitting on the most cash that they've ever sat on in their history. I think Warren Buffett and Berkshire are sitting on like $220 billion right now of cash. They've sold off a bunch of Apple stock in particular, is Berkshire Hathaway's biggest holding. And Buffett has said, hey, it's not that I don't believe in Apple. It's not that I don't love the company. He still has tons of Apple stock and a bunch of other stuff too. But he just feels like he's better suited sitting in cash right now. And a lot of people have kind of done this. The Dow Jones, I don't know what it is today, but I saw it like last week, it was 41,000. 41,000. Man, if we go back to the subprime mortgage crisis when it absolutely crashed, it wasn't that long ago. It was 15 years ago. It was at 6,500. It bottomed out at 6,500, the Dow Jones. And now it's at 41,000. And so I know, and I've got folks that are in my comment section that have said, you know, it's not necessarily about timing the market, but it's also kind of about, too, just trying to read the tea leaves, trying to figure it out. Now, the other side of the story is the Federal Reserve. They just lowered rates by 0.5 point. They're trying to get ahead of a potential recession. You know, did they get ahead of it in time? You know, there's always trailing kind of results on all this stuff. They were pretty aggressive, thought that they might do a 1/4 basis point or, you know, they might do a half. They went with a half. That's pretty aggressive to go ahead and start the rate cuts. You know, and the other part too is that we were never going to get to a point where, you know, 1981, you had interest rates at 18%. You know, the Fed fund rate was insane because of inflation was insane and all this. But we have so much national debt here in the U.S. that we can't afford. We'll never go back to 18%, knock on wood, because we have to pay that on our debt. You know, we're not going to raise the interest on our own debt to that significantly. So look, it was never going to go dramatically. It wasn't going to be 10%. We can't afford to frankly. And so what does that mean? Maybe we just have to get used to a world where there is just inflation. Eggs are expensive. Gas is expensive. But these are the consequences of $4 trillion hitting the market, coming in. And yes, there are a lot of people that needed stimulus during that time. So I know I get people in the comments that'll say like, yeah, a lot of people needed that money. Guys, there are a lot of people that needed the money, and there's a lot of people that did not. There's a lot of people that didn't. That's the whole kind of issue with blanket stimulus. If you send out blanket stimulus and not like $20, but pretty significant blanket stimulus out to the whole population. I mean, that has an effect. All that money gets spent into the economy, and guess what? Stuff is going to get more expensive as a result of it. No, I'm not some sort of economist. I know hindsight is 2020. I don't have a degree from Yale like Janet Yellen does, who also missed this, by the way. This is a very important high-level person in our government that didn't see this level of inflation coming. So I know I'm just an idiot here that didn't go to Yale, but I think common sense would tell you that that amount of stimulus was going to have some adverse effects. There was going to be some effects. It's not just free money that goes out to everybody. Anyway, we're getting a little bit off topic, but I'm going to swing this thing back to sports cards. And there's an event that happened recently that I think is a very interesting, could be a catalyst for pricing to move upward. Could be, might not be. Again, there is so many kind of conflicting events that are going on right now in the world. It's very difficult to have any sort of idea. And even when stuff, you think it's going to go one way, it'll go the other way. But that thing that happened that I'm talking about is there was a Fanatics Collect Sotheby's joint auction, live auction. I saw this on, God, I can't remember his IG account now. He's a graded gamer guy, Eric, the dentist, VVG something on IG. I'll see if I can post something here, a picture here, but he was there. I guess he got invited to it and he was bidding on stuff and whatever. But it was a live auction, and I thought that was actually really interesting. It was cool. I had heard about this coming up. I'd forgotten about it, to be honest. Robert Kraft is there sitting next to Tom Brady. He bought a $120,000 Tom Brady Contenders Auto rookie card, which of course is interesting. Does he do that as a favor? Look, $100,000 for Robert Kraft. That's a drop in the bucket for that guy. So maybe he did it as just kind of like, hey, I'm here, I'm participating. I want to support the cause type thing. But I think it speaks to the power. Again, I'm just going to go back to Michael Rubin again. He is also really good buddies with Tom Brady and Robert Kraft. He's just so well connected all over the place. And when you saw that, I was looking at images of this and kind of just thinking about it. I've heard a lot of talk in this space about, hey, we're trying to get kind of sports cards collectibles in the same world as fine art and art sales. And when you look at art, people spend dramatic amounts of money. Like when we're talking about real money, high net worth folks, they're not typically buying cards, but they are buying expensive paintings. They are buying expensive artwork. That's part of kind of, you're in the cool crowd. If you're in the top 0.001%, you're buying some sweet art. There's also, but I will say too, there's tax benefits to art that are not necessarily there with sports cards. So let's separate kind of the two things. I'm not saying that they're the same, but I think that there is an effort to see sports cards and these types of sports memorabilia, collectibles, in the same world as artwork and have people be as excited about them and to buy them and that sort of thing. So, but again, art, I think I saw is like $65-70 billion a year is spent on fine art, investable art, if you will. So this is something to keep an eye on. Another thing to keep an eye on is, are there lobbyists for collectibles to where there could be more advantageous tax benefits for collectibles in a similar manner to what you have with art? Again, I'm not a tax expert, but I do know through the Google, depending on where you live and all that. Again, these are advanced tax strategies that I am not a part of. I don't own any sort of art that would be in this world, but I wonder if there will be lobbyists for this to get these sorts of items kind of into the same world from a tax treatment standpoint. And if that does happen, that could be, that could just be a catalyst for sports cards, sports memorabilia, or pop culture items. If you're kind of wrapping in collectibles into that space, that's something I'm going to watch too. I haven't seen anything like anyone trying to pass a bill to adding sports cards or, similar collectibles in with the way that art is treated from a tax standpoint. But watch for that. That could be interesting to watch down the road. So again, when we're talking about expensive cards, cards that most of the hobby isn't buying, I own a couple of expensive cards, so it's not most of what I'm buying at all. But that is, I think, something to pay attention to. If it starts getting treated like a real asset, like a real investable asset. It sort of is now. When you're talking about 52 tops, Mantle, PSA 9, PSA 10, this sort of thing, these high-graded vintage cards, you're talking about, these are investable type cards for sure. But the majority of the hobby is not. And so, yes, a lot of speculation money in the hobby now. Is it warranted? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? It's something that we're always paying attention to, trying to read the tea leaves, trying to pay attention to what's going on in the industry, what are collectors saying, what are dealers saying, and all of these sorts of things all kind of pile in. And then what's going on in the world and how can that affect sports card prices? Because whether you are just collecting for fun, whether you're speculating, whether you're investing, quotation marks, in cards, all of these things have an impact on you in some way. All right, my friends, that's all I've got today. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.